I hope you guys are doing good in November. I'm okay. Nothing's wrong with me. I'm happy to be here. We're happy to be jam-packed tonight. But on the other hand, I don't know. Someone pulled that trick on me today. If you had unlimited amounts of wishes, what would you do? Everything on the table, like nothing off limits. You can solve world hunger. You can end all wars. You could cure diseases. And I'm kind of ashamed to admit, my first 4 or 5 things were college football related. I'm not in a good place. November always gets me like this. The playoff release always gets me like this. And I swear every summer it's not going to happen. Then it happens anyway. I'm very glad I have you guys. No one else would understand me. We are jam-packed. We are high atop a somewhat gloomy downtown Nashville, Tennessee. That's okay, though, because the sun will rise again this weekend. It is Thursday night. It is November 14th. It is the year of our Lord 2024. And we have proudly presented to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors upset alerts. I've got half a dozen of them. I've got 2 or 3 games that, honestly, we probably should have talked about on Tuesday night. And for that, I accept partial responsibility. Most of it goes on producer Jesse. Part of it's on me. Some teams need to be heads up this weekend. No one's marketing Week 12 as like this big potential volcanic Saturday. I haven't even said it. And yet it could be. It could be that, friends. There's something happening with Deion in Colorado. To be more specific, they're winning. But do you notice something that's not happening with them? I will discuss that because it was all over the place last year and not so much this year. The playoff selection process has flaws. I know that's not a big headline that shocks the world, but it does have flaws. And some of the flaws may be the total opposite of the flaws that are being accused. I will tell you what I mean by that. We're going to have Cubelic, although Jesse, he hadn't texted me back, so we better check on Cubelic. Allegedly, he'll be along in about 30 or so minutes. They're watching us in Spartanburg, South Carolina, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, Odessa, Texas, St. Paul, Minnesota. I am headed to Athens, Georgia tonight. I'll be there tomorrow. Going to get a nice lift in over at Georgia. Going to talk to a lot of folks that I have not seen. I have not been down there for a game since the last time Tennessee was down there for a game. It went great for me. It didn't go so well for them. We'll see how this weekend goes. Make sure you're following on Instagram at LateKickJosh. I'll have plenty of stuff from there. Tomorrow we'll have Friday Night Lines Friday night. We'll have sideline access for the game Saturday, and it should be a lot of fun. All right, let's dive into the show tonight as we crack open an ice-cold Zevia. We're back to our roots tonight. We're back to cream soda. Look, I love a lot of these flavors. Excuse me, I like a lot of the flavors. I love cream soda. It is great. A lot of you have given Zevia a try, and I just humbly suggest it. You will not be disappointed, and that is 0 sugar, my friends, 0 sugar. We've got upset alerts on tap for Week 12, and I want to take a look at 6 of them, and I've got some concerns out there. So Missouri is playing South Carolina in perhaps the most under-the-radar legit game this weekend. These are both teams that have at least whispered the word playoff about themselves. Whether you buy it or not, whether I buy it or not, is frankly irrelevant. Because these are teams that have played either really good ball as of late or pretty good ball at some point this year. I see on the bottom of our screen here that our friends at FanDuel have put a line of 13.5 on this game in favor of South Carolina. Now, I have all the respect in the world for Missouri beating Oklahoma last week. Backup quarterback or not, I have respect for it, but this is a really tough spot for them. And you know the old stat that's been floating around a lot, they've been outscored 75-10 on the road in their 2 biggest road games, and it's true. They went to Alabama and got rolled. They went to A&M and got rolled. Okay, but Eli Drinkwitz is always good to pull one of these off per year. The problem is, as I see it, how many of those deep shots to Luther Burden and Theo Weiss can I trust Drew Pine to hit on the road in Williams-Brice Stadium, most underrated environment in college football, against this pass rush? And I don't have a lot of confidence. In fact, I think this is a showcase game for South Carolina. Now, I know Missouri is listening to this, and I understand that they will harness this because knowing that program like I think I do, they are smart enough to take all of this disrespect coming out of my mouth, and they'll cue it up, and they should. But they're going to have to prove me wrong because I think South Carolina has a decided advantage here. I've only got a 5 on the upset alert concern scale in this one. However, as we move deeper into the old slate on Saturday, there are some games that are not on anyone's radars that I think should be. Oregon's at Wisconsin Saturday. Oregon's favored by 13.5. This is a total ambush spot. I'm concerned about it, and I don't think many people are. You don't think Wisconsin's very good? Okay. You think Oregon's the best team in the country? Hey, I do too. but I have a little concern for a team playing their 8th consecutive game, flying across 2 time zones for the 3rd time in the last few weeks against a rested Wisconsin team whose preseason goals are sort of out the window, which just means you got a good coach in Luke Fickell with 2 weeks to prepare and to gear up for basically a Super Bowl. This is their playoff game. This is their national championship game. And they've run the ball fairly well. And I'm just telling you, if Oregon comes in there and plays B+ or better ball, they will win. However, what we know about college football teams, even the best ones, is over the course of a 12-game season, sometimes you just toss your C+ or C- effort out there. And it's in these kinds of spots disproportionately where it's more likely to happen. Tez Johnson got banged up last week. You're just trying to crawl into that bye week. You know what? That's not fair to Oregon. They're trying to surge into the bye week, but they're trying to get there nonetheless. Now, they do have a very late bye week. The trade-off is they got to play 8 games in a row to get there. And so this is the spot. This is a very, very big ambush spot. I got a 7 on the upset alert concern meter. I have my eye on this game. I think it very, very well could be a game that is close in the 4th quarter, and you're shocked by it because you've seen Oregon and I've seen Oregon take care of business in these spots this year. They smoked Illinois. They smoked Purdue on the road on short rest. I'm concerned about this one. That's what I'll say about it. 7 on the concern meter. Kansas is at Brigham Young. Now, as you know, we have exempted Brigham Young from the JP Poll's typical metrics and criteria. We have rated them over the past few weeks. However, I do need to inform you, Brigham Young is playing Kansas at home this weekend. They're favored by 2.5. That's home field. I mean, the odds makers at FanDuel are telling you these teams are equal on a neutral site. And Kansas has been bad at various points this year, but they have not been bad as of late. They are 3-6. So I need to tell you again now for the folks who have been hating on the JP poll for not having Brigham Young really high, and I had to manually bump them higher than the model has them. And I keep trying to defend the position of the model, and that is that Brigham Young wouldn't be favored over a lot of these teams. Even though hats off to them for being undefeated, they wouldn't be favored over a lot of these teams, and I keep getting pushback on it. Well, here is Exhibit A. They're playing a 3-6 team at home this weekend, and they're favored by 2.5. That's the whole point. Now, they can go win by 30 and make all that irrelevant, but they're favored by 2.5. Here's why. Jalen Daniels is kind of back. The quarterback for Kansas, his first 4 or 5 games, Jesse, they were bad. His last 4 games, though, have been exactly what we hoped and crossed our fingers and thought that he would be this year. The counter to that is a very, very scientific model we call Cougar Magic immunity. And they've had it out there all year. And this is going to be the best offense probably that Brigham Young has seen all year. But, I mean, think about the environment that Kansas is walking into. You got BYU undefeated in mid-November. A place will be insane this weekend. I've got a 9 on the upset alert concern scale because I've watched Kansas play recently, and they don't look anything like their former selves. And I've seen Brigham Young get by really, really close a few times. All credit to him for winning. This is an extremely dangerous spot for him. Next week at Arizona State is a dangerous spot for him. Who knows, Houston to end the season may be a dangerous spot for him. Just watch out for this. I have not heard anyone talking about this game this weekend, at least in an extended fashion. I'm concerned about it. And we'll leave it at that. By the way, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. If you haven't already, it's free. We do the show free 3 times a week. It's just college football. We love it. We love it. We don't talk about anything else. And so it costs you nothing to subscribe, and it doesn't even affect you. It just helps us. So we would appreciate it. Boise, what are they doing this weekend? Anybody? Well, they're going to San Jose State. Now, Boise's favored by 13.5. I only have a 6 on the upset alert concern scale, but a 6 that's worth watching. And I'll tell you why. Everyone knows who the best G5 running back is. Ashton Genty, right? Maybe the best tailback in the country at any level. However, we're not here on Thursday night in our upset alert segment to point out what everyone knows. What I want to point out is the best wide receiver at the G5 level. Anyone? Cue the Jeopardy music. Anyone? Nick Nash. Would be a great WWE ring name, but it also happens to be the guy who leads FBS in virtually every category. He leads in receptions. He leads in receiving yards per game. He leads in receiving touchdowns. And I mention that because Boise's pass defense is in the 100s. That's the good news if you're pulling for an upset. The bad news, if you're pulling for an upset, is San Jose State against the run is 75th. Basically, what I just told you is blindly take the over, although I myself am not, so that's kind of hypocritical. But I've got a 6 on this. They scooted barely by Nevada last week. What have we told you about November? When you're a contender in November, boy, the air gets a lot thinner. I always use the tightrope walk analogy. If you're walking a tightrope and it's 10 feet off the ground, and you walk another tightrope and it's 100 feet off the ground, technically you walk the tightropes the same way. However, from the neck up, in your mind, you handle that 100-foot tightrope walk different, because you know the consequences are fatal if you screw up that high. 10 feet, ow, I sprained my ankle. That's about the worst of it. Mick Foley fell further than that in Hell in a Cell in 1998. Boise's tightrope is getting higher and higher and higher by the week, and just some weird stuff can happen. Virginia is at Notre Dame. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to present to you the idea that Virginia could beat Notre Dame. However, I'm going to talk about it anyway. I'm going to put a 3 on the upset alert concern scale. We cannot ever exempt Notre Dame from falling in these sorts of spots, because we have seen them fall as 20-plus point favorites a couple of times, including this year already at home against Northern Illinois, although I have been dutifully informed by the committee that I'm supposed to forget about that. They'll call us a Notre Dame hater show for that comment, by the way. Notre Dame, 50-plus points back-to-back weeks. Good. That's very good. Virginia, they've beaten Pitt. They play Louisville close. Notre Dame, they kind of feel to me nationally like they're in this spot where everyone is looking towards the Army game, and then they know Notre Dame's got to go to Southern Cal at the end of the year, but it's largely about where they'll be seated in the playoff. Will they be ahead of or behind losing teams coming from conference title games? And this whole time, Virginia's just girding up their loins to go into South Bend, 22.5-point dogs, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking to myself, Virginia's been scrappy this year. They have been. And I don't think that this game has people's full attention. And so I'm only putting a 3 to a 3.5 on the upset alert concern scale. I'm interested in these points, though, namely all 22.5 of them. I have not had Director Colin add it to the Ramen Noodle Express, but I have my eye on it. Friday Night Lines tomorrow night on the old Instagram at Late Kick Josh. And lastly, and we have sort of breaking news on this game, Florida is playing host to LSU Saturday. And we did have Billy Napier at his coach's show about 30 minutes ago as we're live. We're live on Thursday night. If you're watching a replay, I'm talking to you at 7:13 p.m. Central Time on Thursday night. DJ Lagway is good to go. DJ Lagway is back, and so he will start at quarterback for Florida. That line already dropped from 4.5 to 3.5. LSU is a 3.5-point favorite, and I don't know, frankly, that most of America realizes that line is that short. But I'll tell you two things. Firstly, this is a tough spot for LSU, but they've still got a lot of their postseason goals in play. I don't think people realize it, but they could still win the SEC championship. They could still go to the playoff, and it wouldn't take 15 crazy things happening, but they got to keep winning. Okay, so they haven't checked out. However, man, they got to get back up after getting their spine ripped out by Alabama last week, and they got to go on the road against a Florida team that is a 4-win team right now. They got 3 games left. All right, they got this one. They've got Ole Miss coming in there, and then they go to Florida State. They got to win 2 of these 3 to be bowl eligible. So they've still got that to play for, but I'm just going to shoot straight with you guys. Odds makers don't think Florida's that bad a team, especially with DJ Lagway. The effort they gave against Tennessee, the effort they gave against Georgia up until Lagway went out, and then you didn't have Lagway against Texas. An odds maker looks at that and says, don't really care about the Texas outcome. They got blown out. Lagway's back, different team. They could beat LSU outright. And you know what? For a program that just announced we're keeping Billy Napier, this would be big validation that we made the right move. We made the right call. I've got a 7 on the upset alert concern scale, but I put that 7 on this sheet of paper like an hour and a half ago. Now that I know DJ Lagway's playing, you know what, Jesse? Manual over right here. 8.5. 8.5. LSU better be heads up here. Always a tough game. There's a long and storied history in that LSU-Florida rivalry. And I think we could add another chapter this weekend. Let me take a I poured the cream soda. I didn't take a sip of the cream soda. Yes. I had a long-lost friend text me earlier today. Haven't heard from this person probably in like a decade. Maybe like 7 years. I see you sipping Zevia on the show. I had to give up soda a long time ago. Is it legit? I said yes, in all caps. It is legit. I'll tell you what else is legit. Although I don't think you can get Zevia here at the moment. Academy Sports and Outdoors. You can get everything else there. Everything you need for your entire Christmas list. Just check, 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 check. If there's stuff on someone's Christmas wish list that you can't find at Academy, call an audible on the Christmas wish list, is my advice. We're opening up 2 new stores this weekend. If you prove to me that you go to these grand openings, I'm giving away 5 chalice of supremacy. Chalice is the plural of chalice, for those of you who are new. I was told we mispronounced this town the other day. Not Meridian, Mississippi. I got that one on lock. So we're opening an academy in Meridian this weekend and Corsicana, Texas, or the Dallas market, for those unfamiliar. You guys show up, show out, prove it. 5 chalice of supremacy on the way at random. Okay, everyone's talking about it, so I'm going to talk about it because we are nothing if not people who have our ear to the college football streets. Many of you are upset about the college football playoff selection process and rankings process, and you know what? I am too, so I'm right there with you. There's an argument I keep hearing that I wanted to address tonight. Colin, do you have that tweet? Someone sent this to me earlier today, and it was addressed to like everyone. I was just included. He said, why would Georgia and Clemson or A&M Notre Dame ever be played? Those games were played in the first couple of weeks of the season. It was the first week of the season. Remember, Georgia played Clemson, and Notre Dame went to A&M. He's saying, why even play those games? There's no reward, and the risk of losing is too high. The game suffers. They punish teams for good games. Wet paper sack schedules like Indiana. That's the way to go. Now, of course, the thinking here is Georgia played Clemson, and Notre Dame goes and plays A&M. I mean, A&M lost to Notre Dame, and A&M is kind of being punished for that right now because they are a 2-loss team, and it's very obvious that A&M could have just scheduled a directional school in week 1. They would have won. And based on the way the committee is handling these teams right now, it seems the committee would have looked and said, good for you. Let's see. Let's squint. Looks like a 1 in the loss column. So they're good. You are what your record says you are. It's a problem. I can't disagree. I cannot disagree with you guys when you point this out. It is a problem. It's a big problem, and you're going to have to address it if you're the committee, or you're going to have a much bigger issue on your hand. Because I was being told a couple of years ago, remember this? Remember when the committee came out and said, we are going to really emphasize rewarding tough schedule. If you schedule tough, if you load up your schedule with challenges, we're going to reward you for that. Well, no, you're not yet. You are absolutely not doing that yet. And you got a really important decision to make if you're the committee. Because as much as I try and defend the committee's logic, like I don't think they've done a half bad job overall, just over the last several years. When people point this out, I just have to cede the point to them. I have to cede the floor. I said, you got a point. I don't know what else to say. You got a really important decision to make coming up this cycle and in cycles to come if you're the committee, because right now you are basically telling the world we are judging you based on your loss column. And if you're undefeated or you're a 1-loss team, we don't particularly care how you went about it. We're going to put you higher than 2-loss teams. Alabama's the highest ranked 2-loss team, and everyone ahead of them, 1 loss or 0 losses. Like there is no 2-loss team sprinkled up there, and it is classic you are what your record says you are ideology, unless you're SMU, in which case you just get the total shaft. But SMU notwithstanding, and I'll get back to them in a second, my biggest concern entering this process, as I shared with you guys, was not we're expanding the playoff. Once they announced they were expanding it, that fight was done. The follow-up was, I'm really worried it's going to devalue the emphasis that's placed on big regular season games. But now I've learned I need a second concern, and that is, will we just flat out de-incentivize playing big games? I thought the worst case was we'll still have a bunch of big games, and the playoff committee will reward someone for scheduling those big games. The problem is with 12 teams in the playoff, those big games won't have the same sense of urgency. that they used to have. That we used to play these big games in the regular season with no safety net built under them, and now there'll be a big playoff safety net, and everyone knows you can afford to lose, blah, blah, blah. What I didn't plan on was the committee was going to lie and say we're going to emphasize rewarding tough scheduling, and instead they were just going to stick to you are what your record says you are, foolishness, at which case I've got to worry about Ohio State. Ohio State's a perfect example. Ohio State has Texas on the schedule next year. What benefit is there under the current model for Ohio State to play Texas? James Franklin and Penn State went and played West Virginia to start the season, and someone asked him, can you see loading up on these sort of out-of-conference premier matchups in the future? And he was blunt. He said, no, I can't. Because as things stand right now, what incentive is there for us? These guys want to challenge themselves. Everyone has fun playing those games, but if you get punished for losing a game blindly and you get rewarded for winning games blindly, well, just go to the bakery and load yourself up with cream puffs. Everyone wants to yell at the SEC. Shame on you guys for not adding a ninth conference game. Why would you? In fact, not only would I stick at 8, I'd remove all of the premier matchups. I'd go play my FCS. I'd go play 3 directional schools from the G5 at the lower ranks, and I'd force the committee to keep me out. They're not going to do it. They're telling you. It doesn't matter what their words are. Their actions suggest they're not going to do it. So that's a problem. That is a big problem right now that the committee's going to have to face, and if it means swerving on their own logic, if it means swerving on their own preset ideas and I guess the precedent that they've set, that's the word I'm looking for, so be it. But you got to make a stand here. Now, some other stuff I'm hearing that I've always had a problem with that you'd think I'd be trafficking in. You would think I'm sitting here releasing my power ratings every Tuesday, right? I release the JP poll, and I'll always say I've got this team way higher than the AP or the College Football Playoff Committee does, and I've got this team way lower. You would think I'd be the first person to yell, so-and-so should be higher than so-and-so because they'd be favored against them. Or so-and-so shouldn't be that high because several teams beneath them would beat them. Well, I don't traffic in that because I don't think that's how this is supposed to work. As much as I just talked about how the committee needs to reward dynamic scheduling, you do also have to balance heavily results on the field. I threw Cannell for a loop the other day. We were doing a live hit, and he didn't think I'd go down this road, and I did. And I said, Daniel Jeremetrius Cannell, you're absolutely right, in theory, that you have to reward and honor merit, and you have to honor the results on the field because at the end of the day, that's all this game is about. It's about playing the games and winning, but unlike the NFL, that is a data point. That is not the end-all, be-all data point because unlike the NFL, we don't all play 17 scheduled games against roughly similar competition. There are Grand Canyons in the differences in strength of schedule in this sport. But what I will not do is I will not ever advocate for what some people, including Nick Saban, advocated for a couple of years ago. I thought Saban was so dead wrong when he was sitting there trying to advocate for Alabama to make the playoff. It was last year, a year before, when they got left out, and he said, well, we'd be favored over the teams that are in the playoff. It doesn't matter because you didn't win your games. If we were doing it that way, we would just look at who has the best recruiting classes over the last few years, which means you got a loaded roster, which means you would disproportionately be favored in games, and let's just usher you into the playoff with a 12-week bye. Why even play the games? So everyone who shouts that at me, why do you even play the games when I release the JP poll? Why should you even play the games? You should play the games to see who wins the games. But if you're still going to power rate one team above the other, even though they've lost to that team below them, then what's the point? Well, this isn't meant to be any corollary to how I think teams should be ranked. I think I've posted that explainer video every day for like 2 years, and it still goes over people's heads. You got to honor the results on the field, but you also have to mix that in helpfully with understanding how to properly diagnose strength of schedule. And another thing that is bothering me a little bit here, I'm just pointing out many of the gripes I have. I know you guys have your own gripes. I'll be happy to listen to them or read them in the comment section. There's this other thing that happens. You may have noticed it. Maybe you've participated in it, where a team like Ole Miss is ranked wherever they're ranked. I don't know. I've got them top 5 in my power ratings. I think sky high of Ole Miss right now. And so let's say you're advocating for Ole Miss to be in the playoff. Some guy's going to come in from the bleachers and yell, "They lost to Kentucky." And you probably sit there and you wait for the rest of his argument. And then you realize, oh, that's his argument. They lost to Kentucky. Okay, that's a fact. The sky is blue, water is wet. Ole Miss lost to Kentucky. Is that it? That's it. Okay, well, my counter would be, yes, but they smoked South Carolina on the road, right? Yeah. And they crushed Arkansas, at which point he'll stand back up and say, oh, but Arkansas sucks. Well, they don't, actually. They don't. They're just not a top 25 team, which brings me to my next of the more laughable metrics that the playoff committee uses, and it is that little metric called ranked wins. Ranked wins. What is a ranked win? Well, a ranked win is a win you have over a team that's in their top 25. Question, pop quiz here. Team A has 2 ranked wins, and they're 12-0. Team B has 0 ranked wins, and they're 12-0. Which team has the tougher strength of schedule? You may say, well, that's obvious, Josh. Team A has the tougher strength of schedule because they have 2 ranked wins. What if I told you that Team A beat the 24th and 25th best teams in the country, and then the rest of their wins were against teams ranked in the 100s? Meanwhile, Team B got wins over 26 through 37. Well, all of a sudden, Team B has no ranked wins, but boy, they got 12 wins against top 45 teams. So who has the tougher strength of schedule? My point in going back to Ole Miss is that win at Arkansas. It's just a random game I'm pulling out. They'll get no credit for that. They went and blew the doors off Arkansas in Fayetteville. I got Arkansas at 30th right now in my power ratings. And you can care about that or not care about it, but I'm trying to make a point in that Penn State's the number 4 team in the country right now. And I think Penn State's a little overrated, but I'm okay. Largely, I'm okay with it. They're just a little overrated. I don't have a huge gripe. But my point is, Penn State lost to Ohio State. All right, tough team to play. Lost at home, but still, tough team to play. But if you look at the schedule right here, what's Penn State's best win? Most of you would say on the road at Wisconsin, maybe. They won 28-13 there, had backup quarterback in. My point is, Wisconsin's not ranked either. But I've got Wisconsin at 29th. I think Wisconsin and Arkansas are very favorable teams right now. You try and defend Ole Miss by saying they went to Arkansas and won in dominant fashion, you'll get laughed at. Meanwhile, one of the tenets of Penn State's resume right now is, well, they went to Wisconsin and won. And you know what? I got no problem with that being a tenet. That should be a pillar of their resume. That's a really good win. So is Ole Miss going on the road at Arkansas and winning. It's just so predictable how people cherry pick at that point. And then lastly, and kind of addressed this the other night, SEC bias is always going to be front and center in the equation. And I looked at these rankings the other night, and I saw bias. I sure did. I identified bias. I would like to announce to you my investigation is complete, and I did identify bias, and it's Big Ten bias. So, what are we going to do about this? Josh, that's impossible. It's not impossible, friends. Did you see the rankings? Did you take a look at them? Right now, we got, 4 of the top 5 in the Big Ten? And I got no problem with Oregon and Ohio State up there. But, buddy, if you think Penn State and Indiana are truly the 4th and 5th best teams in the country, or even the most deserving teams in the country right now, we fundamentally differ in the way that this thing should be stacked. The whole ranked wins thing we would disagree with. And I would also say, this is not specific to one team, I've also had a big problem with the way we define wins. I've always been a big believer that I would like to define the value of a win or the value of a loss when it happens, and with very few exceptions, freeze it in that moment in time and don't go back and change it. There are exceptions to that rule, but here's the problem I've always had. So let's say me and Jesse get in a fight, and I just beat the fool out of Jesse. I mean, like to the point where he's barely breathing, and he finally gets himself back together after a couple of hours of laying on the sidewalk all disheveled, and then he gets in a fight 10 minutes later with like a 13-year-old. The 13-year-old also gets one up on Jesse. Some dude could be sitting over there watching all this and look at me and say, you know, in retrospect, that win you got against Jesse in that fight is not nearly as impressive because he went on to lose to a 13-year-old kid. And I would look back at that guy and say, sir, That's technically accurate. However, could I suggest to you that the hurting I put on Jesse may have had a significant role in his inability to defend himself against the 13-year-old kid? No one wants to hear it. No one wants to hear it. And that happens a lot. That happens to Jesse when he's fighting a 13-year-old kid, but it just as easily happens in college football when you were one caliber of team early in the year, and then you got beat, and not only physically, but mentally, you're a different team later on down the road, and like all of a sudden you don't get credit, especially you may be the team that did that to that other team. What if LSU were to go and lose to Florida by 10 this weekend? Can you prove that Alabama didn't suck the soul out of their body and make that possible? I've always had a problem with us retroactively just removing the value of wins. Now, I got no problem if you want to retroactively add value to wins. I've never had a problem with that. I would also ask, by the way, if you guys, we got a lot of people watching. We got a lot more people who will watch the replay. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We do the show free 3 times a week. We love doing it. It's just college football. And I would really appreciate it if you guys subscribe, because it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't sign you up for anything. It just helps us. And by the way, I hold in my hand a definition that I wanted to share with you, courtesy of the dictionary. Bias. That word's being thrown around a lot, if you'll notice. Bias. What does it mean? Bias is an inclination to favor or oppose a person, a group, an idea, or a thing in a way that's unfair, inaccurate, or prejudicial. Do we have SEC bias out there? Because having a bunch of SEC teams in the top 20 alone is not evidence of bias. It's only bias if it's unfair to have them there. Is it unfair? If not them, who should be there? That's all I ask. That's all I humbly ask. The whole new Saturday tour is headed to Athens, Georgia, like tonight. Sometime tonight. You may see me, if you're following on Instagram, @LateKickJosh, you may see me just hanging out, just pulled up, posted up at a QuickTrip. They're making the entire whole new Saturday tour possible. We handed out several free tanks of gas to a guy who tagged us earlier yesterday, who had gotten permission from the wife to drive from Oregon to the Michigan game and back. He said, QuickTrip, if you'll just give me some gas, I'll go to the Wisconsin game. QuickTrip stepped up, gave him the gas, and he's on the way to Madison, Wisconsin. And you know, that's what we're all about, making dreams come true, one full tank of gas at the time. We appreciate QuickTrip. All right, I want to point out something really quick. Jesse, I'm going to call an audible here. First off, let me know when you have Cubelic. I'm going to call an audible. Let's save the bold prediction bust segment for another day. I'm going to do the Colorado stuff here right quick, and then we'll get to Cubelic. There's a thing happening with Colorado right now that I find very peculiar, and one of you asked a question about this. Jack said, why does it seem like Colorado's doing much better this year, but is actually a contender, and yet we're hearing less about them than we did last year? Thank you, Jack. He's right. Colorado's a way better football team this year. Check. And we see far less headlines about them. Check. Now, why would that be, Jack? Well, I did a little investigation, and I have some results. And the results may not make you happy, but they will make you more informed. Colorado last year, not necessarily as good as they were this year, but they got 10 times the headlines. Then all of a sudden they're good. They're favored to win the Big 12, and not as many people are talking about them. And Jack was asking, why would that be? Well, Jack, it is my unfortunate duty to inform you that there are quite a few people who cover this sport for a living who really don't love the sport all that much. I know that comes as a surprise to some of you. It's true, though. They don't love college football. Now, they don't love the tree, but they love all the ornaments they can hang on the tree. And what that means in real world is they don't love that you can convert a lot on third and short, and they don't necessarily love how you incorporate the tight ends and blocking schemes, but what they do love is maybe a player gets arrested. What they do love is maybe someone pops off at the mouth, or maybe, you know, there's a really quick handshake at the end of a game, and that leads to headlines. They traffic in that stuff. That's like oxygen to this kind of person. Now, there are a lot of folks who cover this sport, and they love the sport. I love the sport. I absolutely love it. I actually could care less about a lot of the other stuff. So I'm kind of inverted from the kind of person I'm talking about. So we've talked about Colorado several times on the show, but you will notice, I don't have to mention names, You'll notice folks who could not get Colorado's name and could not get Deion's name out of their mouth last year for all the wrong reasons, who've really been kind of silent. They've just gone full church mouse on you this year. And why is it? It's because largely it's been a drama-free season out there. And largely they've just played good ball. They run the ball better this year than they did last year. Not great, but better. They're playing much better defense. Not elite, but much better. And Deion ended up being right when he talked about what he wanted to do year 1 to year 2. And that's not as attractive to talk about to some of these folks. I can't wait to see what they do, because this is a team that is about to find their way onto a stage that no one thought they'd be playing on. I mean, even the most bullish of Colorado fans, I don't think we're sitting there just banging the drum for Big 12 championship contention this year. Maybe you were. I didn't hear a lot of it. And they're close, man. They're close, and I can't wait to see it. I just, independent of all the headlines and like all the bravado and like all the subcontext, just look at what the football team is doing. That's well worth talking about. It may not generate as much traffic for you. There are bigger prices to pay in life, I promise you. And so 17 in the country right now, JP Poll largely agrees with where the playoff committee has them ranked. They got Utah coming up this weekend. They go to Kansas, and then they got a team that is winless in conference play to end the season in Oklahoma State. I salute them, man. I'll talk about them. Hats off. So before I'm going to give you a couple of best bets. Before I get to that right quick, I got some news for you. So when I partnered with QuickTrip, I said we got to get the folks free gas. When we partnered with Academy, I said I got to get the folks free Academy gift cards. And so we're looking for ways to get you value at every turn. So I was talking to management the other day, and I said, why don't we just give people a discount to 247sports.com because they watch our show? And he's like, oh, man. Well, I don't like that. So I had producer Jesse lay down in front of one of management's Teslas, and he didn't get up until we got some value for you. I mean, he gripped that heated steering wheel tighter than he does our bonus checks. But I am happy to report that management has caved. So I know signing day is coming up. We got portal season. We got coaching search and coaching carousel season. This is the time of year, I think, according to the data, where a lot of you sign up. So forget the price you would normally pay over there. Whenever you're signing up, and you sign up at 247sports.com, you get VIP access to all the team sites, not just one. It's actually, I don't think they should do it that way. I think that's too much value, but that's the way they do it, and they run the website and whatever. You guys go over there and sign up. Enter PATE50, Pate 50, and or 50, and you get like more than 50% off, I'm told. Jesse, it's a little more than 50% off. So I'm doing what I can, guys. A lot of you are going to go sign up anyway. Pate 50 will get you a little over 50% off. So, Jesse, I saw what you just typed in the prompter. Now, I'm ready to break this news, and then what I'm ready to do is just say, forget it, and we'll do the bold prediction segment. So are we absolutely sure the breaking news in the prompter is true? Don't you hate to see it? Ladies and gentlemen, it is my unfortunate duty to inform you that Cole hates you. Cole Cubelic hates you, and he has ghosted you tonight. So I'm going to give you some Ramen Noodle Express best bets, and then I'm going to go right on about our show, the way we were going to do it before we changed the whole thing for him to come on. Okay, exclusive odds presented courtesy of FanDuel here, as they always are. You've got the Bet 5 to get 150 promotion coming up this weekend. You can use the QR code on the screen right there to sign up. We'll have profit boosts on the big games this weekend. But also, what we'll have is we'll have some best bets. We're already 1-0 on the week because we cannot lose in Maction. Ohio covered for us last night. We already had Tennessee plus 9.5 on the Ramen Noodle Express. I'm adding 2 more games tonight. First game I'm adding, Wake Forest plus 10.5 against North Carolina. And the other best bet aboard the Ramen Noodle Express, West Virginia plus 2.5 against Baylor. And there will be several more that I add on Friday Night Lines tomorrow night, live from Athens, Georgia. All you have to do is be following on Instagram at LateKickJosh. I'll post the time, and then I'll be live. You'll see it. You can't miss it. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to go back to this little segment we started the other night. This is so toxic, but it is, on another hand, so great because it removes all the blame from me, and I just get to make fun of other people's predictions for a change. Bold prediction season in the summer is very fun. A lot of you make very outlandish predictions, but all we do is we record them, and I say, I'll see you in December. And some of you hit it, and some of you are geniuses, and hats off to you. Others crash and burn into the countryside, leaving only a hole in the ground. And it is those folks that I want to talk to tonight. We've got some bold prediction misses to go over. And the first one takes us to Columbus, Ohio, where Kyle, well, he's actually in Bellefontaine, Ohio, but he talked about the team in Columbus. He said Ohio State wins every game they play this year by 2+ possessions. Well, this looked good until it didn't against Oregon. And they went and lost against Oregon, so it's done. But even if that didn't happen, you had a 4-point win against Nebraska. You had a 7-point win against Penn State. And it just goes to show you why I put a 9.75 on the boldness scale on this prediction. College teams, even the best ones, Kyle, they don't just play their A-level game 12 weeks in a row. Now, some of them are talented enough where they can get by without doing that, but Ohio State, their offensive line has not been good enough to allow them to do that this year. They barely skated by against Nebraska. They had a real challenge on their hands against Penn State. So that one crashed and burned. I'll tell you another one that was horrific, man. This next one's really bad. And it's a two-parter, and half of it may happen for all I know, but whew, Carson from Tulsa, Oklahoma, home of QuickTrip, mind you. He said Oklahoma State finally wins its first Big 12 championship since 2011, and 2 Big 12 teams make the playoff. Oklahoma State, at the time of this show, is 0-7 in Big 12 play. Somehow they beat Arkansas during this abomination of a season. They are 3-7 right now. Since 2006, Mike Gundy has never finished with under 7 wins. And the best they could do this year is 5 wins. That's the best they could do, right? Yeah. It's bad. Now, as for the second part of the prediction, that'll probably also crash and burn too, but at least you do have an outside shot of getting 2 Big 12 teams in. It's one of the great case studies in playoff committee behavior this year. If BYU goes to Dallas undefeated and Colorado beats them, Colorado's in, what are they doing with Brigham Young? Are they dropping them all the way out? Because that's the path where you could get 2 Big 12 teams. Next up, Tennessee. We're going to see them in person again this weekend. Tennessee, at the beginning of the year, we had a bold prediction from Bruce. He said Tennessee ends the season with the number 1 offense and number 20 defense. I put a 9.5 on this, on the boldness scale. Now, the defense is excellent. You actually should have inverted this. You should have said top defense and top 20 offense, because the defense is 5th in the country right now in points per game allowed, in total yards allowed. I think it's 5th in the country. So that's not bad. However, the offense is not quite to par because they had that little string where they got shut out in first halves a bunch, and it's just not quite where we want it to be. Not bad. I think if Nico Iamaleava would have hit a couple more deep balls per game, which have been open, then it'd be a different story. This is not going to happen, but you know what? Tennessee, for all I know, could go win the national title this year anyway, because they are a rapidly ascending team, and let's just pause on that until after this weekend. But things look okay for Tennessee right now. And then lastly, this one hurts. This is a dagger to the side. Mike from Grove City, Ohio said Rutgers, and we're just going to put an S on the end for Mike, Rutgers will win 10 games and earn the S on the end of their name, once again becoming Rutgers. I see what you did there, Mike. You just made a bad prediction. That's what you did. So the thinking behind this was Rutgers was the team that was not going to play Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, and Iowa. They didn't play Iowa either. And so they were the team that if it all comes together, like Syracuse and the ACC, those were the teams that just dodged all the big boys. Well, Rutgers started off strong. They started off 4-0, and then it got sideways. They lost to Nebraska by 7. They got blown out by Wisconsin. They lost to UCLA. They lost at USC. Finally got up off the mat against Minnesota last week, but this is obviously not happening. They're 5-4 right now. I made this a 9.25 on the boldness scale. I had hope. Like, I have dreams just like you do, Mike, but it was not to be. with Rutgers. All right, well, I guess the plus side to Cubelic ghosting us in the most disrespectful fashion imaginable. He disrespected you, Colin. He disrespected you, Jesse. And most importantly, all of you in the live chat. He disrespected you. I'm going to find out he had a family emergency, and we're going to delete this entire portion of the show. But in the meantime, the good news is that means I get to get on the road early and head down to Athens, GA tonight. So in a strange roundabout way, although I would never say this to his face, I appreciate you, Cole Cubelic. For producer Jesse, for director Colin, I'm Josh Pate. Enjoy the games this weekend. We will react Sunday night, same time as always. Until then, take care and God bless.